Dominic back here with the Overhead Athletic Institute. Today we're going to give you a hip mobility progression that you can use to loosen up your hips. You can go ahead and hit this multiple times a week to loosen up those hips so you can get into the positions in the throw that you need to get into to throw hard and to throw safe. Stretch number 1 here, we're going to go ahead and start with our static stretches. So we got 4 static stretches for you. First one's here is going to be a hip flexor stretch. So we're going to go ahead and hit both sides. We're going to have one knee up, one knee down. First thing we're going to focus on is we're going to get a posterior pelvic tilt. So we're going to try to tuck our butt underneath our body, really engage our core. So instead of it pushing out this way and arching our back, we're trying to roll the butt underneath. So you should already be feeling a stretch in your hip flexor here. You're going to slightly push the hips forward, very slowly, and then you're going to go ahead and lift whatever leg is down. You're going to lift that arm and give a slight lean over to that opposite leg. You should feel a stretch right up through your hip flexor. This is very important for your hip lock position in the throw where you're going into hip extension. If you do not have the necessary flexibility in your hip flexor, you're not going to be able to get into that position, which you won't be able to accurately or effectively decelerate your arm. Second stretch here, we're going to go into a frog stretch. So we're going to go ahead all down on all fours. We're going to kick out the knees as far as we can. But the thing on this one that's a little bit different is we're going to kick the feet out even with the knees. So this is really going to focus on the internal rotation aspect of our hips. So instead of having the feet here, we're going to move the feet out. And then from here, we're going to kick the butt back as far as we can, holding it here. Should feel it right down in your groin area. This is very important for being able to load into your back glute as you're getting ready to move down the mound and create glute activation, which will help you rotate and help you stay closed away from the target in the beginning of the throw. Third stretch here is our pigeon stretch. So we're gonna go ahead, put our foot forward. We're gonna have our foot even with our knee. Do not let our foot dip down. Keep a straight line, foot even with the knee, back leg straight. And we're just gonna go ahead here, kick the foot back as far as we can, and bring the chest forward. We're really trying to get this butt down as close to the ground as we can. We're going to sit here. This is important for our hip external rotation, which is also important for the throw to make sure that we have good synchronous movement throughout our hips throughout the whole action of the throw.
If you're looking for the most comprehensive resource on training and rehabilitation of the throwing athlete, check out my book, Arm Alloy. The link is in the description. Now, back to the video.
Stretch number 4 here. This one's sometimes called the Spider-Man stretch or the world's greatest stretch. We're gonna go ahead again, have one leg up. We're gonna put our opposite arm down on the ground, and we're gonna lift that knee up off the ground, that back knee. And then from here, we're gonna try to bring our inside elbow down to the toe. Here, we wanna try to keep our knee as far back as possible. So once we get that knee down, we're actively trying to push this knee back while keeping that elbow into the ground. This is focusing on some of our adductor mobility as well as our hip external rotation. Again, very important for being able to move through your hips as you move through the different phases of the throw. Exercise number 5, these are our hip 90-90 hip shifts. You guys have probably done these before, but you gotta make sure you're doing them correctly. So first start off with your hands back, and you're just gonna flip the hips right here, 90 degrees, flipping those hips, keeping our legs at 90 degrees. Big thing we want to focus on here is you're trying to create as much separation as possible between your knees as you begin to shift. So as you're lifting that leg, you're trying to keep this knee down for as long as possible, create as much separation before you start lifting that knee. You're going to go ahead, flip back and forth. If that's too easy, you can go ahead and lift the arms up off the ground, hold them at the shoulder, go ahead, lift, and rotate here. If that's easy, the further you lean forward, the harder it's going to be to shift those hips. Exercise number 6 here, we got our hip cars, is what they're mostly commonly known as. So we're gonna go on, grab onto something. We're gonna lift our outside leg, lift up to 90 degrees, and we're gonna rotate our hips out as far as we can while trying to keep our hips facing forward. Once we get out as far as we can, we're gonna go ahead and internally rotate our hips. Try not to let that knee fall down as we go and rotate. I see a lot of people doing this as they rotate. We don't want that. Keep that knee up as high as you can as you're rotating, and then hold it up here. Try to keep that foot above the knee, and then rotate back down and back forward. Again, try not to lean too much as you're going into your internal rotation. Try to do all this standing almost straight up as you begin to rotate up and around. So these exercises you should be hitting 5-6 days a week. Your static stretches, so the first 4 you should be hitting for at least 3 sets of 30 seconds each. And then you can go ahead into your dynamic, your hip shifts. You should be doing 10 each way, and then your cars, 10 each leg as well. Make sure we're starting with our static stretches and then finishing with our dynamic stretches, so we're building a little bit of range of motion before we go into our dynamic stretches, so we can use that newfound range in our dynamic stretches, which will help strengthen and mobilize our hips as we begin to continue doing these exercises for an extended period of time. If you're interested in this content, continue to subscribe and continue to comment anything else you'd like to see from us. Thanks. We'll see you next time.